on Clearing the Clutter Inside and Out, we are talking about clutter in all of its forms. Are you following your passion, or has your vision of your life become cluttered? Do you have a clear definition of success, or have you allowed others to define it for you? Are you worried about getting all your needs met in the future? Let's begin our month focusing on clearing clutter with Julie Coraccio podcast interviews.
Are you overwhelmed by clutter, looking to organize your life? Do you feel stuck and are ready for a change? Every Tuesday at 1 p.m., join award-winning professional organizer and coach Julie Coraccio on Clearing the Clutter Inside and Out as she supports you in navigating the waters of decluttering your life and getting organized. Julie thinks outside the box and examines clutter in all areas: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic, and more. Ready to live a more joyful and fulfilling life?
This month focuses on interviews I've done on other podcasts. Sometimes it takes hearing something in a different way or by asking a different question for that aha moment. Have an aha moment from one of the interviews? I'd love to hear it. Today's interview was a short-lived podcast on humans with James Richmond, but I really enjoyed all the questions he asked and we had a lively conversation. The only editing I did was to delete music and commercials that included a now defunct website. I see mental clutter is, I think the big thing is what I would call monkey mind. And the example I would use, to me, what that means, mind's going 24/7, it never turns off. Like when I started my own business, I couldn't shut my mind off. There was always something I could be doing. Got to post to social media, got to do this, that. It just didn't calm down. And so I'm a huge believer of meditation. And even if you don't do a meditation practice, if you can sit quietly with your eyes closed, doing deep breathing for 10 minutes a day, I think that makes a huge difference. It just starts to calm your mind down.
Hey, I believe that the word clutter isn't something you hear for the first time. But what you're going to find out today in this episode, and I will as well, is that there are not just one type of clutter in our lives, you know. There are many types of clutters and clutters that, you know, really we shouldn't have in our lives. And you know, there are so many different ways how we can keep on clinging onto these clutters, and luckily, good for us, so many ways how we can actually get rid of these clutters. I'm James Richmond, and this is On Humans, your daily podcast show about convergence of technology and humanity. I always start off every episode with asking one question using some words that you have used yourself to describe your business, your personality, and what it is that you do. And so obviously, I'm not going to lie, I'm on your website right now, and the three words that jump into my face, to be honest, are reawaken your brilliance. Why did you choose these three words, and what do they actually mean to you?
Well, I chose them. It's interesting. When I first started my business, it was called Healing Through Organization. And that was very purposeful because when you clear clutter and you get organized, it helps heal you. I would have clients that healed relationships, improved that. But then I started an internet TV show and I was like, what do I want to do it about? And I was thinking, what could I call it? And so I meditated on it because I'd been thinking about Thrive, but then I'd Google and all these things came up and Reawaken Your Brilliance came up. And so when I'm quiet and meditating, I know you've got to pay attention to that. And so as it's developed, I believe we all have greatness inside of us, and you can be the best mailman ever. You can be the best mother. It's not about being famous. It's not about everyone in the world knowing who you are. It's not about making the most money. It's about following your passion, following your soul, and developing that. So I believe we all have brilliance inside of us, but a lot of us have forgotten it. In case what I do, maybe it's clutter. But maybe something happens to us in childhood and we retreat or withdraw or whatever it is. But I see my support is helping people reawaken that brilliance because it's already there. We have all the answers we need within. And so I see my job is helping bring those out.
See, I caught you saying word most of us perhaps have forgotten about it. So do you believe that all of us at some point kind of knew and were aware of this brilliance?
I really think it varies from individual to individual. I think as babies, we're perfect. We're aware. We just know that we are awesome. But then life happens to us, whether it's our parents, whether it's society, whether it's a teacher, and we forget that or we hide it. We can't be who we are. And so I think for me, if you would have said this to me 5 years ago, I probably, I don't know. I'd probably would have to truthfully think about it. And so for me, it's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing journey and knowing that it continues to unfold. I mentioned earlier, my business was healing through organization, but as that evolved and moved forward and I found what is it that I enjoy doing? What am I passionate about? Reawaken Your Brilliance came out of that. So I'm ever evolving, at least I hope to be.
Yeah, and see, this actually reminds me of a book that I read, The Four Agreements, where the author called it domestication. We've been domesticated, pretty much because it takes a strong word, because it's like, like animals, if you're a good puppy, it's a good doggy, good puppy, there's your treat. If you're bad, you get a smack. But that's the way we've been brought up in schools and as parents, you're a good girl, you get a sweetie. If you don't, you get a belt. The same in school. If you fit in, you do the grade. Up you go, level up. If you don't, you get pointed out for being different. That's why he calls it domestication. So I can absolutely understand where you come from. But so many times you mentioned about a word that I know is a big problem for a lot of people, which is clutter, I mean, there could be a series of episodes, In fact, I know that's what you dedicate your podcast for, and we can go into that a little bit deeper a little bit later. But first of all, maybe you can explain, how did you come about talking, writing, doing all sort of things regards cluttering and uncluttering your life? Was it some sort of personal issue to yours, or you've seen a lot of cases that affected people's lives?
It really evolved from the healing through organization, because I found that people would have clutter, and when they released the clutter, it transformed their lives. But as I grew and did my personal development, because I'm always working on myself, I see a coach, I do something monthly. It's very important to me. And what I noticed and what evolved, and here's where it started. I was working with a client and she said, I want to talk to you about some stuff. And I said, okay. And, I come prepared. I'm ready. Let's clear the clutter. Let's get organized. And she started to tell me about her life. And then I offered some thoughts, and we continue to have a conversation. And how I work is I usually work in 4-hour blocks. And you do that so people can see you've done something. And especially depending on the amount of stuff that you need to release, it can take time. And so at about 3 hours, she said, I can tell you're getting this is making you nervous, but it's really helping me. She said, you're not judging me. You're giving me support, and you're helping me clear some emotional clutter. And I said, okay. And so we did that for a little bit longer. And then at the end, I helped her organize a bit. And she emailed me. She said, come back. I want to talk. Because after you left, I got everything organized. I was able to let things go. And so as I did my own personal development, I saw that there's obviously physical clutter. But then I'm like, wow, there's really mental clutter. And to me, it can mean different things. But some of the things it brings to mind for me are living in the past or living in the future, because the present moment is all we have. And the present moment is your power to change. If you're worried about the past, you can't change that. If you're in the future, you can't change that. But if you are in the moment, that is your power to change. And then I also saw a lot of emotional clutter. And again, that can vary, but I just finished a course that I've created for people. And one of the things we examine is your relationships, because that can completely cause emotional clutter. And I struggle with emotional eating. When I would not acknowledge my anger or my sadness, grab a bag of chips. Let's keep on eating or get that ice cream. And so to me, that's emotional clutter. And when you don't have that emotional clutter, you're not going to have a negative habit, such as eating what you shouldn't. And then spiritual clutter. And for me, that can mean many different things, but it includes things like judgment, whether we're judging ourselves or we're judging another person, or if we're comparing ourselves to someone else. I'm a unique individual. How can I compare myself to someone else? And so I really look at all those 4 areas, because to me, they're intertwined. Because I noticed when working with clients, if you got rid of the physical clutter, the inside clutter started to release, and vice versa.
Wow. See, I didn't even know there are 4 aspects to it. The first thing that comes to my mind, of course, is a chaotic person who can't organize themselves. A room is full of physical clutter. Then eventually, of course, I realize, of course, there's also, mental clutter. But now there are 4 aspects. I mean, let's not waste our time. We got 1 hour. Let's take one by one. You choose which one of these 4 we dive into, and let's talk about these things. Because I mean, who else? If not you.
Wow. Well, you know what? Are you sure you want me to choose? Because I am completely open. I kind of feel like I'd rather have you choose. But if you force me to, I'll choose.
Oh no, man. The last thing I want to do is force people.
So, I mean, I don't mean that like that. But I mean, what are you most curious about?
To be honest, I think I used to be very, I used to have a lot of clutter in my life, I think. But since I started traveling and I acquired minimalistic, simplistic lifestyle, I have 2 shirts and 2 trousers and laptop, microphone to do a podcast. That's it. And I see the happiness, the fulfillment for not owning things. So I know how hard it came to me, but I still don't know why I had clutter. So maybe can start with physical clutter.
Okay, well, physical clutter, obviously, let's think about being in a room with a ton of things. Now, you're kind of a minimalist, it sounds like, but I want for people listening, if you were to go in a room, or maybe you have a colleague, or maybe it's your office, and you have piles everywhere, and you've got physical clutter, you can literally feel how heavy that is. You can feel the energy, because remember, everything's made of energy. No matter what your belief system is, I believe physics has proven that everything is energy. And then if you were to go, and even if you're just sitting here listening, close your eyes and think of a room that has a lot of clutter. And then in the next moment, close your eyes and think of a room that's uncluttered. Whether it's a room in your home, an office, you can literally feel the difference. And physical clutter can affect you on many levels. For instance, I've worked with clients. If you have so many things piled on your bed, you can't get any sleep. You're not going to get a comfortable 8 hours of sleep if there's clutter on your bed. Or if your kitchen's very cluttered and you've got stuff scattered everywhere, you're most likely not going to take the time to make a healthy meal. You're probably going to get takeout or rely on frozen food. And when something's really cluttered, you don't want to be there. Think about how it drains you. It's not a really good feeling. And then, you can get in the whole, I don't work with hoarders. You need to have special training in that. But that's a whole other ball of wax and some deeper psychological issues going in. But, I once worked with someone and I have a screening process. I want to make sure I'm a good fit. And she wasn't honest in the screening process. And this is the only time it's happened to me. So she said, and I asked a bunch of questions and she said, I'm not a hoarder because if you have 18 inches from the wall of clutter, I only have 16. So in her mind, she wasn't, but you can literally feel how heavy that is and how draining that is. And if you say, I own my own business, if I have a lot of clutter, how am I going to accomplish things? Or if I lose a client file? I had a great story. Someone asked me to do some business and I said, yeah. And I said, but it's right before the holidays. Please call me at the beginning of the year and I'd be happy to. About 2 months after the beginning of the year, she called me. I could tell from the phone. She was like, hey, is this... She didn't know. My guess was she'd just written a random number down, didn't know who she was calling, but you can lose business when that happens. And I'm thinking, I can't refer this person. I don't trust them if they're going to take care of people that I'd refer them to. So, that's just an example of some physical clutter. And they've also found that it increases stress. 80% of all our medical expenses now are stress related. If you have a lot of clutter, a lot of times you will be non-compliant with your medication. So the physical clutter has, other ramifications as well.
See, you mentioned actually that the hoard, you don't touch the hoarders because you need special certification for that, because obviously it involves a lot more psychological issues and problems. But the first thing actually, when I was thinking about physical clutter, just basic, not hoarder, but physical clutter as such, on a basic level, I actually was thinking that it comes from psychological problems, not happy with your life, feeling lonely, I don't know, feeling poor maybe. And in fact, I heard a lot of people say, I will need this at some point in my life. I just keep it there just in case I will need it at some point. Maybe it's not a psychological issue, but maybe it's something to do with the mindset. Why do you think it comes from in the first place?
I have a couple thoughts on that. When people tell me they might need something in the future, I say, trust that you're going to get what you need when you need it. I mean, truthfully. And that's a big thing, and that I work with people. Now, I'll have a couple examples here. I would agree with you that in my experience, most of the time that's why I do the mental, emotional, and spiritual, because I think it's all tied in. But I have a client that I'm finishing up with now who lets go of clutter really easily. She's just incredibly busy. She has a high-powered job. She has a family. There's a lot going on. I worked with her 4 years ago. She called me again. Things have changed. I need you to clear stuff out. Now, when I work with someone, I give them a maintenance plan. Like I work with them and I say, okay, here's where you tend to get stuck and here's what you need to do. Now, again, she's just so busy, but she is rare. I'm going to be honest, again, in my experience, that's rare. I know someone that I'm very close with that grew up extremely poor in just very dire situations. And so there is a tendency, and I understand it and I respect it. And so that's why it's a process. But when you haven't been able to have things as a child, then you can understand that needing and wanting to hold on to something. And so that's why you have to be very respectful and non-judgmental when working with someone. And it's a process. Like the first client that I ever had, I ended up doing her entire house, and it was like pulling teeth when we first started. She didn't want to let go of anything. But as we continued and she practiced that, it became easier. And then again, when working with someone, there are questions that I'd ask them to kind of get them to think and support them in releasing clutter.
Trust that you will get what you need to get and what you need to have when you need to have it. That's, I think, something that really stayed in my mind the minute Julie said it. Yeah, again, it all boils down to the trust. And in this case, it's really trusting in yourself and in life and in universe that you will be provided with whatever you need when you need it, instead of saving things for a rainy day, so to speak. Now, do you have any examples, stories about those success stories that you've helped to?
Oh, sure. I'll tell you a couple my favorite ones. And this is a great example how things are linked. So I was working with a client. She had a stack, I'd say it's probably 2.5, 3 feet of papers and newspaper articles and things of that nature. And I said, okay, well, what's going on here? And she said to me, I'm holding on to these to send to people. And I said, okay, well, how long have you had them? 2 to 3 years. And I said, okay. So we ended up talking a little more and digging deeper. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we all have the answers within. My help is to tease those out. And so what she realized, she had this great aha moment. She said, I'm saving them because I'm afraid if I don't send them articles and don't stay in touch with them, then they won't love me. And as soon as she expressed it, she knew how crazy that was, and she was able to release all that clutter. I've also had where I've worked with people. I mean, one of my other favorite stories is I was working with a woman, and clutter was causing her a problem with her mother. Mother didn't live with her, but lived in the same town and was over frequently. And as soon as we had gotten just about the entire first floor, and her mom walked in and complimented her and was so happy, and it helped change the relationship. It switched. Her mother wasn't being critical. She was, the energy changed. And so that was something that was really helpful. Another great story I have, a woman was not quite honeymoon, but they, I think, had been married 3 or 4 years, hadn't been married a really long time. And their dining room table had a bunch of clutter on it, and they never had dinner there. And so when we got all that taken care of, and writing and being like, this helped save my marriage, because we now eat dinner here. He's not angry when he comes home, and he's not frustrated by the clutter. So, I mean, that's why it really can change your life. I really believe that.
Surrounded by clutter, tired of the stress it creates, ready to find peace of mind and reduce your anxiety? Our comprehensive How to Declutter Your Life course guides you step by step in how to clear clutter and simplify your life. Each section is 3 months: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, and features manageable to-dos. A bonus month on clearing energetic clutter is also included. Choose either workbook or video course. How to Declutter Your Life is designed to build a strong foundation for releasing clutter and continued personal growth. Learn more at reawakenyourbrilliance.com.
Yeah, I mean, I like how you dive deeper into it, actually, because obviously a lot of people just look at the physical, tangible side of it. Okay, it takes up space, it's harder to move around, you bump into things. But you're looking into energy side of it as well, which is, something that a lot of people, like I said, don't think about. And hence, it would be useful to have someone like you that you can show the other angle of these things. Okay, so maybe now we can jump on to the next thing. I picked the first one. What's your turn now to pick the second angle of
Well, we can
clutter.
talk about mental clutter if you want.
Yes,
How
please.
does that sound?
Yes, please.
Okay. So as I mentioned, we'll get a little deeper in the beginning. I see mental clutter is, I think the big thing is what I would call monkey mind. And the example I would use, to me, what that means, mind's going 24/7, it never turns off. Like when I started my own business, I couldn't shut my mind off. There was always something I could be doing. Got to post to social media, got to do this, that. It just didn't calm down. And so I'm a huge believer of meditation. And even if you don't do a meditation practice, if you can sit quietly with your eyes closed, doing deep breathing for 10 minutes a day, I think that makes a huge difference. It just starts to calm your mind down. Again, so many of us are either in the past or in the future. We're never living in the present moment. And I think that's a huge thing with mental clutter. And also anxiety, things like that, worrying. I used to worry, does this person like me? Do they hate me? Was what I said right? Should I have said this? Again, that kind of that never stops. And I think most of us get that and aren't able to shut off our brains. And so those are a few examples for me of what I consider mental clutter.
And what do you think causes it in the first place, like most of these things? Is it like, lack of self-confidence or, again, past perhaps?
Well, in my personal belief system, I don't see the ego as bad. I see the ego, or what I would maybe term body personality, is it's doing its job. But the ego is the one going, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. The heart would be like, oh, I know what our life path is. It's all good. That's all right. We don't need to worry about that, because if we're living in the present moment, how can we worry about that? Like, here's an example. You're like, oh my God, am I going to have enough money for retirement? And you're worrying, that you're spinning your wheels. And it's what I would say is, okay, deep breath. What in this present moment can you do? You can make a call to find a financial advisor. You can email your friends who are good with money and say to them, what do? You can look at your budget and say, okay, gosh, I spend $100 at Starbucks every week. Maybe that's something that I can switch. And so do you see how in the present moment you were starting to take action? You were starting to make a plan. When you're like, and spinning your wheels, that's clutter. That's not doing anything. And that's just increasing your mental clutter.
No, I think that this is, good actionable takeaway, that do what would actually, physically make a difference, Like if you see you're spending a lot, just obvious thing is just spend less, find out how, instead of worrying, because worrying, of course, is not gonna solve the problem. I liked what you said. We actually covered this part on our show many times about judging ourselves, to be honest, and worrying about what people think about ourselves. But especially for someone like, an entrepreneur who is making sometimes even new ideas, new things that have never been done. Obviously, you will always have haters and lovers. So how do you, again, from the success stories that you help people, how do you teach them and how do you convince them to stop worrying about being likable? Because that's the last thing I think I could suggest to anyone.
I think that's a challenge. And again, I think that it depends on where you are in your personal growth. And so my goal is to always meet people where they are. And so I think it just takes work. It takes introspection. What I recommend to people is, I'm a huge fan of the 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Jr. And he said, and that was a big aha, one of the big aha for me. I interviewed his son and he was awesome. And so, but when I read that book, it was number 2 is don't take anything personally. And so that for me was a big, because I thought it's not about me. And I've learned that. Like I had an incident with a neighbor who screamed at me the other day. And I'm like, not about me. Doesn't have anything to do with me. And I don't care. Now, and for me in my personal development, it was, part of it was an age thing. I'm tired. I waste so much energy worrying about what people are thinking, and I don't have time for that. And to me, again, that's a great example of clutter. Honest, and I have integrity, and if that's where I'm coming from, I can't do any more than that.
Wow, see, I actually like the concept. Didn't I mention at the beginning the 4 Agreements, the domestication, and now you're telling me that you like that book as well. Yeah, it also changed the way I think. But I liked what you said, I don't have time for this. I think we got to really, I can tell this works to our listeners as well. You got to really dive deep into this sentence, because it has become just like a, like a saying, like a slang, like, I got no time for this. It's like, it's like doesn't mean anything. But if you look into it, actually, it actually is what it says. I honestly don't have time for this. And you can probably say the same. You honestly, genuinely do not have time for this. It's not just a saying.
Right. But think about, you had brought up the domestication point. And if you're a sheep and a follower, and I don't see that as necessarily bad, but I think part of a mentality of people who want to remain in power is, let's have them waste their issue on worrying about comparing, like, women. You have to be the thinnest woman out there. Let's have them expend their energy on that. For men, they've unfortunately started to move in that arena more, like, I've got to have pecs or whatever and be really built. If you're expending all your energy on worrying about what people think about you, how do you have time to search what's important for you? How do you have time to devote the mental energy on what you want to do and what you want to accomplish? And again, I'm speaking from experience, and I have no judgment on this. I wasted so many years on that. If I can prevent someone from wasting their time on that, then I will be thrilled.
Yeah, I think that's a really good angle, a really good point that you mentioned. If you spend so much time making sure that others like you, what about yourself? Do you even like yourself? You've put all this effort, So
Yeah.
I've seen actually, many great examples. But the thing is, it's a trap again. It's a big trap that I've noticed. I'd like to hear your input in this. Again, I've met, say, women and guys who look after their, build and all that, And again, I'm not just talking about keeping fit and healthy. I'm talking about to that extent that they're trying to match what's on the magazines. So I'm saying, why do you do this? It's like, I'm doing it for myself. I feel good. But they don't realize that they feel good just because that they can match what's in the magazines. And they feel good because people like them now. That's the source of liking themselves. It's not really that I look in the mirror, yes, I always wanted to be like this. What are your thoughts on this trap?
Well, then we're going to switch to spiritual clutter. Is that okay? And then we'll
absolutely.
do emotion
Hell
after
yes.
that.
Yeah.
Because I would say, I mentioned judgment and things like that. It's been my observation that I'd say the Dalai Lama is the only person I can think off the top of my head that probably doesn't have this problem. And people who are at that level that have done a tremendous amount of introspection. But if you feel good enough, if you feel worthy enough, then you don't have to look like what's on the magazine. And I think, again, when we're a baby, we're perfect and we're awesome and we know it. And we're just love. And then life happens to us. And then we get these messages, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy, whatever it comes from. And so I would say that a lot of things can be distilled down to that. Like you think things are many layered. And for example, when I was working with my healer coach woman, I remember I had all this rage. I was so angry. And then I worked with her once a month. I'd go back and I'm like, oh, I'm so sad. And do you know what I'm saying? There were so many layers to that needed to be released. So I think most of us don't feel we're worthy or don't feel we're good enough. Now, you might not be able to articulate that. I think that comes out in many different ways, because if we felt we were good enough and we felt we were worthy, we'd be unstoppable. We wouldn't do harmful things. We wouldn't smoke cigarettes. We wouldn't eat too many chips. We just wouldn't do that because we'd be like, you know what? I'm worthy. I'm good enough. I'm going to take care of myself.
Yeah, I mean, I like you mentioned, binge eating, smoking and all these things. And I don't know if you have heard of such concept that I mentioned on my show many times. Again, I found out throughout the show that it's not actually invented by Tony Robbins, but it's promoted heavily by Tony Robbins, called 6 Human Needs. If you have heard of them before, have you?
No, I have not.
I can't remember. I can't remember all of them, but I think there are such things that every human being needs a bit of certainty, uncertainty, love, connection, growth, contribution. They need, and every aspect, work, relationship. And if any of them are down, missing, then you try to seek one of those things in binge eating, drinking, and so on. So yeah, I thought you might have heard, and you would think how it relates to what it is that you do. But perhaps it does, you just haven't heard of the concept itself. Now, I also wanted to ask you about, again, see, it is about comparing yourself to others. I'm talking about success. How a lot of people are successful, be it famous or money-wise or just a lot of achievements. But again, it's not because of themselves, They were, say, a lot of freelancers are like this, Say they create art, whatever it is, paintings, graphic design, whatever it is. So they are earning good money. They can support themselves, their family. They're happy. They are in the flow. But then they feel this eagerness to scale and grow because so many people do it, So they hire help, they scale, they create business, and they're not freelancers anymore. They become business people, which is not what they were meant to do, and they go down the hill. So maybe some thoughts on success related to comparing to others,
I would think that's a great example. And I would say in that example, they went away from their heart. And the ego was the one saying, you have to scale, you have to make more money, you have to do this. Your heart's not saying that. Success, I think, I'll talk about American society. I think success has been defined by monetary means, mainly, or recognition, like being a celebrity, or, mainly wealth, celebrity, or maybe a sports figure, something like that. But I'm a success. I'm honorable. I live each day with integrity. Most of the time, I'm coming from my heart. I'm still a work in progress. I still have a lot to do. I'm in a successful marriage. I'm a great cat mommy. There are lots of things that I do really well. Now, someone might look at that and be like, wow, you really aren't successful. You're not driving a, Lamborghini or something. But that's their definition of success. But I would argue that's really not their definition of success. That's what they have been told. And that's like the Matrix. That's what they're buying into. That's what people want you to think. That's how you define your success. But I don't agree with that. Not at all. I think success is loving, coming from your heart, being a good person, caring about others. That to me is a successful person, because there are people out there that, in my belief, have failed, that aren't good people. I'm very passionate about animals. I, for a long time, was allergic to animals, met my husband, he had a cat, and I thought, it's over before it started, and I haven't been allergic. I'm very passionate. This is a new passion for me about animals. And then I see all these things about this trophy hunting. I just have seen recently all these giraffes being killed, and it breaks my heart. And there's a difference between hunting to feed your family, to put food on the table, and there's a difference between paying $50,000 to fly to Africa to shoot a giraffe. That person, in my mind, I'm successful. I shot a giraffe. In my mind, you are not successful, because you did something that was unnecessarily cruel. Now, there are people listening that might disagree with me, which they're welcome to. But in my view, that's not a success. Now, there are other people who be like, gosh, they're a success. They had the $50,000 they could blow to go to Africa to do it. And they're this great person that they're able to shoot a giraffe. I don't agree with that. And again, to me, it's, what is your ego? To me, that's ego-driven, that you feel the need. What are you trying to prove when you do that? And, I can think of many other examples of the same thing. Who are you trying to prove? That's your ego. Your heart's like, I don't have anything to prove. I am good enough. I am worthy.
Yeah, I think I agree that you are successful once you match your heart's expectations, to be honest, instead of society's, it's okay to match expectations as long as those come from your heart, because yeah, they're like, like goals, like purpose, like vision set by your heart. Actually, there was another episode I did with Mark C. Crowley, who's a leadership expert, and he talks about leading from heart. So I'd like to hear your opinion in our lives. Okay, now more towards clutter. How much of our head we should use, and how much our heart, or maybe we should use balance?
I think that the heart should direct the head. And here's an example of that. I mentioned I just finished this year-long course for people on how to declutter their life. I couldn't have done that without my ego, my mind. My mind's like, organize, you got to write every day, you got to edit. It was a huge undertaking. And so it was informed by my heart. My heart's like, you need to create something to help people who maybe can't afford an organizer, or maybe live in a rural area and can't do that. So it came from the heart. But it was the ego, it was the mind, like, okay, I just can't sit around like, oh, I'm going to create this. That's really lovely, and not having action. The mind does that. The mind takes the action. It's kind of like control and flow. So someone says, hey, I'm interested in your services. Send me a bid. So like, all right, here's what it would cost for my services. Now, if I was trying to control it, did you make a decision yet? Do you want to hire me? Da-da-da-da-da. Nah, you'd be like, okay, if it's meant to happen, it'll happen. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you've done all you can. You've done the mind and you've done the ego. Now you come back to the heart and flow. If it's meant to happen, it will. Instead of trying to control it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I like what you said. If it's meant to happen, it will happen. As long as you have this open mind, and you expect it to happen, you welcome it to happen.
Yes.
So this makes me to ask you a question. Have you heard or seen a film? There's a book as well, The Secret.
I have, yes.
That's what they talk about. They talk about the universe, the attraction, that you open your mind and these things get attracted to you. Just like you said now, without pushing too hard, you just kind of open your mind and open your eyes. So how much of this kind of approach you implement in your life, or is there even? And again, how does it relate to cluttering and uncluttering your life?
Well, I mean, with The Secret, my issue with The Secret is it just seemed to focus on money and material things too much. And I think that you need a balance in that. So that's just my personal opinion. Whatever's going on inside is reflected in your outside environment. I mean, I truly believe that. So if there's some jumbled things going on inside, you're going to have clutter on the outside. And it's not just necessarily physical clutter. If I have a lot of emotional clutter, I might be overweight. It might manifest in that way. I mean, there are different ways. It's like Carl Jung said, what you resist persists. And so if you have all this resistance, then it's going to show up no matter what. If you think you're sidestepping it or outsmarting it, now it's whatever's meant there is going to happen, and it's going to come up until you've eventually meant to deal with it. That's what the clutter is. They get to me and like, okay, it's not stopping. We got to figure out what it is and let it go.
Surrounded by clutter, tired of the stress it creates, ready to find peace of mind and reduce your anxiety? Our comprehensive How to Declutter Your Life course guides you step by step in how to clear clutter and simplify your life. Each section is 3 months. Physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, and features manageable to-dos. A bonus month on clearing energetic clutter is also included. Choose either workbook or video course. How to Declutter Your Life is designed to build a strong foundation for releasing clutter and continued personal growth. Learn more at reawakenyourbrilliance.com.
It makes sense, and I absolutely again liked how you pictured it. What's inside will reflect on outside. And it was, I think, J.K. Rowling again who said a similar thing about books. Books are like a mirror. If an idiot looks inside and reads a book, you can't expect a genius get out of it. After the book is read. Regards the 4 angles, have we covered the 4th one?
No, we haven't discussed emotional. That's the last one we're going to talk about. So, to me, emotional clutter again is there's nothing wrong with expressing rage or expressing sadness, and also with my belief, because a lot of people are taught to suppress those and not do that. And so you need to be able to express those. And again, it can be the opposite. If you have anger all the time and someone asks you a question, it's like my neighbor. I said, please don't have the dog poop in my yard and not pick it up. And they started to scream at me. I'm like, that has nothing to do with me. That was an inappropriate response for what I said. So there's something going on there. So to me, that means not disallowing your emotions, but are they in check? Are you going to be angry at times? Absolutely. But does it warrant it? Does your response warranted to the situation? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it proportional to what's going on? So if you can be, I think the best place is when you can get neutral about something. Oh, you're yelling at me. That's nice. Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to sit back and watch that. So I think a lot of us are just emotions are out of control. They're woo, 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 like they control us in a not good way. And then I am also a firm believer that our relationships in our life can cause emotional clutter. They've done studies that if you hang out with overweight people, you are probably going to become overweight. And so I apply that theory to relationships. If you're hanging out with people who are negative and down on life, you know what? That's going to start to affect you. And to me, that's emotional clutter.
Wow. See, this is, I think, the best example how you can design your life. Lifestyle designer, so to speak. But you design your own lifestyle, just like when you design your your fashion, the way you dress. You go to a shop, you pick certain trousers, certain t-shirts and tops. The same, you can pick your friends. But now a lot of people are struggling with this, actually. As you know, they're very struggling, because especially if those friends come from their childhood, their school, are somehow related to them. I'd like your opinion into this, because I think it's a massive, big problem, isn't it? And it's, again, whether they're afraid to upset people or, I don't know, there's a lot going on.
Well, we could get into this. First of all, you always have a choice. That's something that I want to emphasize. I don't have a choice. Yes, you do. And doing nothing is a choice. For instance, you might say, like, here, I'll use this as an example. This happened to me. So I was friends with someone for 20 plus years, and she wrote something insulting when I got engaged on my Facebook page. I deleted the comment, and I'm like, I'm done. I had reached the point, like, I'd been really tolerant. I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I made the conscious choice to end the friendship. Not everyone, I understand, like, maybe you have an ex-husband, or maybe you have a family member that drives you nuts, and you can't just cut off a relationship. But you can monitor the amount of time that you spend with them, and you can create boundaries. You know what? It's unacceptable for you to yell at me anymore. And if you start to yell at me, I'm just going to walk away. You can set that boundary and then follow that. We show people how to treat us. Then you get support. If you're like, wow, it's really difficult for me. I remember once I had to make a phone call and I made my friend hold my hand. Why? Because I was really nervous. I had been babysitting, it was a long time ago, I'd been babysitting for someone, and they had a lot of money, but always a problem, no check or cash when it came time to pay me. And I was like, I'm done. And the other thing is, I'd felt like I was becoming a surrogate mother to the kids. I'm like, I can't do this. I'm not their parent. It's too emotionally draining for me. I can't do this anymore. And so I called him. I said, I can't watch the kids. I made sure I was paid up, and I'm like, I can't do it. But I was really nervous, so I made my friend hold my hand when I did it. So get support, but just remember you have a choice, and then think about it. Maybe you're like, oh my gosh, we've been family friends forever, and my parents are going to be really angry if I don't hang out with Paul anymore. And then you talk to your parents, are like, no, we know he's an idiot. We want you to be happy. Don't always assume those things, and that, people want what's best for you.
Wow, yeah, these are extreme examples and a good way to deal with them, when it's really someone family related that you can't really completely cut out. And I liked, I can't remember who said this saying that, how people deal and react to something you say or something you do, it's none of your business. I think, again, perhaps from the 4 agreements.
It was number 2, don't take it personally. And so, and then sometimes you're lucky and friendships can just fade. You can let those people, you just never call them back, and then they just have that natural thing. And then, the other thing I would say to look at it like, sometimes, you're meant to be friends with someone for so long, and it served its purpose, and no one's at fault, and that's okay, and you can just let it go. But what I say, and someone got really angry with me on YouTube. I was interviewing someone. It was funny. It was about clutter before I started really focusing on that. And they're like, you just can't let go of relationships. And I'm like, I disagree. If someone is unhealthy and not treating you right, you absolutely are allowed to let that friendship go. And, obviously it was touching a nerve with them, but why should you have someone who doesn't treat you with love and respect in your life? You don't need to put up with that. If you love yourself and think you're good enough and think you're worthy, you wouldn't tolerate it.
You know what? I'm going to be quite brutal and straight talking right here and right now. I think it's worth calling those people clutter, at least in perspective of your angle. Not in general. No one's bad or no one is, good or right or wrong. They do their own bit. But for you, in your perspective, those people are toxic. Those are clutter in your life that are just dragging along because of your guilt feeling. And you not being able to let them go because you feel like, you have to be with them. You have to have them in your life, even though they do not treat you with respect. And if you allow this to happen, clearly, just like Julie mentioned, you're not worthy enough then. First of all, start to think about yourself. How worthy are you really? In people's lives, certain people come in for a certain period of time to exchange some sort of whatever it is, knowledge, experience, help, and then they pass on. And that kind of that's comforting to me. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, I agree with that. I think, what's the saying? Some people come in your life for a reason, a season, or forever or something like that. And that was something that I had to learn. I mean, I used to be really sad, or I'm your friend for lifetime person. But, again, if people around you are influencing you, and again, like that overweight thing, you want people really who are in your life that are good for you, that are a positive influence. And so, I know for me, when I got married, I just got married a couple years ago. And that's my marriage is what's most important. And so I don't go out as much or hang out as much with people as I used to, but it's not a bad thing. I haven't closed myself off. If someone calls me, I'm like, yeah, let's go out. And I just went through a change of friendships. Gosh, within the past year, it's like all these people I was close with just left my life. But then all these really new, groovy people came in who are much more in tune to me on a spiritual level. Like there are certain things I'm like, I can have a conversation with you and you get it. I don't want to be down here in the muckety muck with the ego and the drama. I don't have time for it. And so it's hard. And you think, okay, but I can't have more people coming into my life if it's cluttered with a bunch of people now. But when you release that clutter, it allows you to bring in what you choose, deserve, and desire.
I really love that you mentioned this marriage aspect of it, because there again, there's a lot of clutter in people's heads that unfortunate things happen. For instance, I think a very popular common example is that get into a relationship, not necessarily even a marriage, spend in that relationship a few years, and what happens is, say, I think it's mainly women, but I think it's pretty equal anyway, that say this person relies on another person's compliments and valuation. I only become confident if my loved one thinks I am, beautiful and clever, smart, and so on and so on. The unfortunate situation is, if unfortunately a relationship doesn't work out and you break up, you are left empty, blank. You feel like, man, I'm not worthy anymore because you relied only on one source. Any experience there?
I definitely was in a relationship when I felt like that, but I wasn't angry with him. It had nothing to do with him. If I loved myself and thought I was good and worthy enough, then I wouldn't look to someone else to fill that. Or it's like that's what the clutter is doing. The clutter is filling a need. The clutter is filling something that you cannot get from yourself. And so you're looking at that as a substitute. So I would say that's how it is with a relationship. To me, it was a growing experience. I learned from it. I was on and off with someone for a really long time, and I loved this man, and we just weren't right for each other. And sometimes that's how it is, and I have no regrets. And when I look at my husband and my marriage now, had I not had that experience with the other man, I might not have been open to my husband. And so to me, it's all good. People are like, oh, I made a mistake. If you learned from it, I don't consider it a mistake. I consider it a learning experience. And so don't beat yourself up. It's not a mistake. You learned from it.
Oh yeah, I have heard these kind of examples many times, that it is your past experience that even let you see this new man, to enter a new marriage. You wouldn't have even perhaps noticed him unless you had that experience. So it's great that you actually look at it this way. Yeah.
Well, here, I want to use this as an example with my husband, because this might be for people if they're single and looking, because this to me was an ego thing. So I made a list that's why, again, sometimes the law of attraction stuff drives me nuts. So I made a list of all the qualities I was looking for a man. Now, for the most part, I only had one superficial quality, but I was like, I want someone who's integrity and honest. And my one superficial quality was I want a guy that's 6'2". This is a true story. I would swear on a Bible. So I had a meltdown 2 weeks before I met my husband. I'm like, oh, I'm never going to meet anyone. And meanwhile, I'd been working with a teacher. Again, I try to work with someone monthly to be the best possible woman I can be. And so I went home after, I don't remember what we talked about. And I went home and I literally took the list and I crossed out or made a new one and tick off the 6'2". Met my husband 2 weeks later, and he's 1.5 inches shorter than I am. So when I let go of that height requirement, trying to control, this is what I want, control. The ego wants to control. The heart's like, when you meet the right guy, it's all going to be groovy. And that's what happened. So it didn't let the ego drive me. I let the heart drive me. And I kept all those things. Like, I want a man that's compassionate. I want a man that's kind. And he had all those qualities that I needed.
Wow, this is a great example. Interesting. I thought, yeah, wow. So I bet it inspired you as well now. And again, from this experience, isn't it? You take it as part of experience, and now it drives your life, I believe.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I would call that 6-2 a mental clutter. That's ego. That's going, you need this, you need this. And instead of the heart be like, yeah, when it happens, it happens. Like you'll go, trust in that process.
Surrounded by clutter, tired of the stress it creates, ready to find peace of mind and reduce your anxiety? Our comprehensive How to Declutter Your Life course guides you step by step in how to clear clutter and simplify your life. Each section is 3 months: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, and features manageable to-dos. A bonus month on clearing energetic clutter is also included. Choose either workbook or video course. How to Declutter Your Life is designed to build a strong foundation for releasing clutter and continued personal growth. Learn more at reawakenyourbrilliance.com.
What are your, next goals, next ideas, next visions? Okay, I know you just mentioned you finished the course, what's next? Maybe it's promoting it, maybe it's pushing out a new book, or what are you up to now?
Well, I love that question. I appreciate you asking that. So the first thing, I have a podcast. I'm not hardcore like you are. I only do it weekly. I mean, that's impressive for the people listening. He's being modest, but it's not true. It involves a lot of work. So I just finished this year-long course. And if you don't want to do a year, I've divided it up into physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So that's an option. And then my heart is leading me. I have a couple other more products that I'm in process of developing because I want to be able to support people. And my theory is no excuses. I have something that most people can afford. You can't say to me, I don't have the money. No, you have an option. If you release your clutter, if you're reawakening your brilliance, it helps me because when you share your gifts with the world, I benefit. And I don't know about you, but I want to live in a world where people are happy, they're following their passion, they're being led by their heart. If we were being led by our heart, following our passion, can you even imagine what that world would be like? That's the world I want to live in. And if I can do my little part to support people in doing that, then I'll be happy.
You're a good visionary, I believe, as well, because the way you were just describing it, I could visualize it. And if only I could, buy some, the license and copyright. Right now, I'd play John Lennon, Imagine. Definitely.
Good for you.
Oh, dear. Now then, last thing is that we gotta unfortunately jump into the wrapping up part, which consists of 3 questions, three tasks. Usually people enjoy it, to be honest, so I really hope you'll enjoy it as well, unless you don't want to do it.
No, I'm game, and I'm laughing. Joey just came in the room. He's our cat, so he's probably, yeah, I want to hear what this is about.
All right, then. The first question is nothing, again, I always repeat this, nothing extremely original, but very important to our listeners, and I believe important to you too. Looking back to what we discussed today, summarizing it all, what would be the 2 pieces of advice for our listeners?
1, you have a choice. You always have a choice. And doing nothing is a choice. I think that that's important. And the other thing I would say is that when you live in the present moment, that enables you to have the power to change. Living in the past and living in the future don't allow you to do that. To me, those are 2 very important steps to reawakening your brilliance.
Yeah, I can definitely. That they are part of core. Exactly, they are not something that you can or cannot afford to do. They got to be done if you want to move forward. Moving forward, I want to ask you about books. Obviously, you have read quite a few books to become this smart, so I'll have to ask you to recommend a couple of books to our listeners.
I would recommend my workbook, course book called Decluttering Your Life, and you can find that at reawakenyourbrilliance.com. I love the 4 Agreements. We have both mentioned that, by Don Miguel Ruiz, and it's a short book, but I have to tell you, I refer to it a lot. I think it is an outstanding book, and it has a ton of wisdom. Let's see what else I'd remember. Definitely that. Oh gosh, this is hard because I love to read. And that's I want to bring up. That's an interesting thing. I released 4 boxes of books in January. I have to clear my own clutter. I got to walk the talk, and books are one of the hardest things for me to release. And that led back to, oh, what if I need it in the future? Oh, well, trust I'm going to get the information I need. So if you struggle with releasing books like I do, this is an oldie, but I really enjoyed this years ago, is Women Who Run with the Wolves for Women. I think it's by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. It just, we're talking about developing and finding things, and she's a cantadora, which is, I believe, the Mexican word for storyteller. And I love that. I know that that's old school, but that just popped into my head. And then I think those would be the 2 books off the top of my head.
I got the last question, last task, which a lot of people, most of the people, in fact, I hope all of the people have enjoyed doing, because what I'm trying to achieve is give you the full ownership of this episode. And in order to do that, I'll have to put you in a full control of this podcast in terms of naming it. Whatever you're going to name it is going to go up on iTunes, on our website, so you can say it's fully mine.
I call it Declutter Your Life. Yeah, Declutter Your Life. Now, we could call it Clearing the Clutter Inside and Out, but that's the name of my podcast, so iTunes might get a little cranky on that. So I'm going to suggest Declutter Your Life.
Yep. One of those simple, bold, laser-focused titles that don't need too much of explanation. I love it, definitely.
Takeaways from today's podcast. When you clear your clutter, you can reawaken your brilliance and follow your passion, follow your heart's desires, and make the world a better place by sharing your gifts. If you are concerned about needing something in the future, trust you will get what you need when you need it. Don't worry about saving for that rainy day. Re-examine your definition of success. What does success mean to you? What does your heart, as opposed to your mind, say? What do you really desire? Go out, clear the clutter to create the life you choose, deserve, and desire.
Ready to clear clutter and share your gifts with the world? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, so what step will you take today? Sign up for our newsletter and receive a free copy of our 10 Steps to Clearing Clutter. Julie Coraccio provides coaching, professional organizing and speaking, organizing classes, positive affirmations, and her unique How to Declutter Your Life course. Learn more at reawakenyourbrilliance.com. Subscribe to Clearing the Clutter Inside and Out and join us next Tuesday at 1 p.m.